The Rams are letting Matthew Stafford's agent talk to other teams. I'm going to tell you why you should still not be concerned about losing Stafford. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do me a huge favor. Join the party, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Just past 16,000 subscribers, so a big thank you to all you new subscribers, longtime subscribers. Really, really appreciate it. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. Also do NFL radio for Westwood One. Still flying solo. The People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, is on vacation. He'll be back early next week. But we got more to talk about on the Matthew Stafford contract saga, an important new development. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So that is the number one storyline for the Rams this offseason. Will Matthew Stafford sign a new contract with the Rams to hopefully retire in the Horns, or will the Rams look to trade him and really rebuild as a franchise that enters a completely new era post-Stafford? Well, the latest today is that the Rams are letting Matthew Stafford's agent talk to other teams to get an idea about his value around the league, to gauge his contract value. Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, he was on Rich Eisen today, and he said, quote, "My understanding has been that the Rams have been in conversations with his agent, that they've also given his agent permission to talk to other clubs just to figure out, hey, if he becomes available, if there were a trade, what were the numbers be elsewhere? What would those numbers look like?" That takes care of multiple things. It takes care of, number one, what Matthew Stafford could get if we get to a trade, because you wouldn't be able to execute a Matthew Stafford trade without having a new deal in place. But also, it gives the Rams an idea and Stafford an idea of, hey, we're going to try to work together. Are we going to be able to work out a contract to keep him in LA? So I think first big takeaway from that is I think the Rams are handling this the right way. They're handling this like adults. There's not this big emotional side for Matthew Stafford's camp. You don't see him going to social media and going on all these shows and trying to make this big thing out of this. The NFL is a business, and they're handling this situation accordingly. Do both sides want to stay together and compete for more Super Bowl titles? I think they do. But they are both also doing their due diligence to make sure that this thing is handled in a way in which both sides feel good about their future together. The Rams feel good about the kind of contract they will ultimately sign him to, and then Matthew Stafford and his camp feel good about the market value that he's getting. So I think if the Rams are telling his agent, hey, we want to give you a new contract, $45 million a year. $45 million a year. That is my sweet spot contract for Matthew Stafford. I think the contract they should give him is 3 years, $135 million. But if there are teams out there saying, no, there's $150+ million deals out there from teams willing to pay him $55 million. If that's the truth, and I'm the Rams, I'm saying, well, now we got to kind of think about what this means for the roster and the kind of talent that we can put around him. Because, yes, they have hit on a ton of draft picks. Yes, you have young emerging talent. But at the end of the day, about $37 million in cap space to work with this offseason. And Matthew Stafford is someone that's dealt injuries throughout the last couple of years of his career. Now, he has been durable and he's been ready when it matters most. That is in the postseason, and that's where I think this really comes down to is, hey, he's played in 7 postseason games for the Rams. They won 5 of them, and he's played really well to great in almost every single moment of those games, right? I mean, he has been locked in and dialed in the playoffs, right? They won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford under center. But that is the number one question. How big of a gap is there from what the Rams are willing to pay him to what other teams are willing to pay him? Pelissero will go on to say, if you're trading for the guy and it's going to take a significant pick, let's just say it's going to be a second-round pick, you're going to have to want to know, am I getting this guy for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And that's why the Rams have been willing to let Stafford's agent, Jimmy Sexton, who's very experienced in these matters, to go out and just figure out what would other teams be willing to do. So from the Rams standpoint, you also get to gauge the kind of value you could get for him on the open market. So make no mistake about it, this is the biggest story this offseason in the NFL from a player acquisition standpoint, really, if he does become available, because you have a Super Bowl winning quarterback that can elevate a franchise. And I think it's very apparent right now, the Rams want to keep Matthew Stafford. They've already made that clear. Matthew Stafford, by all reports, trusts the Rams and their vision for the future. He trusts their ability to put together a contender. I think that you look at his family and his daughters and Kelly Stafford, they clearly have established their roots in Los Angeles. I highly doubt that they want to be uprooted and start a new life somewhere else. I think they're comfortable here. He's a star here, but he doesn't have to deal with things that stars in other markets have to deal with, right? Los Angeles, superstars can go out and you can exist and you can go out in society, right? I mean, I think they're comfortable here. I think they like it here. I think they like the lifestyle here. So I think that is something that appeals to them as well. But at the end of the day, the Rams are a very smart organization. They're not going to be desperate in trying to overpay or force someone into a situation that they don't think is the best for this franchise for the next 3 to 5 years. So you got to trust the organization. You really, really have to trust the organization. But coming up next, we're talking more Matthew Stafford and why NFL teams and GMs are very intrigued about what's happening in Los Angeles with Stafford. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets through the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also want to send a shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams, whether it's on the podcast, whether it is on YouTube. You guys are locked in. And if you're not a part of that Every Listeners Club too, we are back at it, making sure we're pumping out episodes Monday through Friday. Travis is back from vacation. I'm going to be doing a lot of solo episodes this offseason. We're going to be doing interviews with players and analysts. So we're going to be bringing in some people in for interviews as well. So a lot of exciting stuff here on Locked On Rams. So you don't want to miss a thing. So be sure to subscribe over on YouTube, watch on YouTube, and then if you're on the pod form, that's awesome as well. If you're driving, if you're at the gym, whatever it is, we just really, really appreciate those everyday listeners. Now, here in our second segment, we're going to pick up the conversation on Matthew Stafford. So I see a lot of people in the comments, D-Mac, hey, he's still under contract. Why is this even a thing, right? He signed that big extension a few years ago. Yes, that is true. He does, by definition, have 2 more years remaining on his contract, but of those 2 years, there's just $4 million guarantee of his $49.6 million cap hit. And then in 2026, there are no guarantees in his contract. So this season in the past season in 2024, they restructured his deal where they took all of that money and they pushed it forward. So he was playing essentially on a 1-year, $40 million contract, knowing that they would have to get back to the negotiations if they wanted for him to feel good about playing here moving forward. So they knew this. This is not something new. The Rams knew this. Stafford knew this, that they were going to have to get back to the negotiating table at some point if he was going to continue his career with the Los Angeles Rams. And ESPN's Dan Graziano, he reported last week that Stafford is likely to return. So that, I think, is based on a couple different things. And I've heard good things as well about this process just playing out, but Stafford ending up back with the Rams. And let's not forget how close this team is to contending for a Super Bowl. They were the surprise team that overcame all the odds a couple seasons ago to just get into the postseason and play a very competitive game against the Detroit Lions. You found lots of young stars. You had Puka Nacua emerge as one of the best receivers in the National Football League, and you picked him with your 4th pick in the 5th round. Guys like Kobe Turner and Byron Young, and these names just started to emerge. And then this past season, the same level of success with some of these young, I wouldn't say the same, but a lot of success from young guys that have continued to emerge as well that you feel good about. Guys like Jared Verse, most pressures in the NFL, even as a rookie. Braden Fisk, he looks like a dog that's going to help this team for a long time too. So there's plenty of examples of young players that look like key pieces in a Super Bowl run. Mind you, had the Rams whiffed on the draft and in free agency, we would not be having this conversation. We'd be looking at a down-to-the-studs level of rebuild, but because the Rams have done so well in the draft, they put themselves in a position where it makes sense to retain and move forward with Matthew Stafford, knowing that if you hit on some free agency pieces, if you hit on health and all these other factors, that there's no reason why you can't be in the Super Bowl mix with Stafford for the next 3 seasons. So I think that's what it comes down to, is the Rams have put themselves in a good position where this is just makes sense. I mean, for other organizations that don't have as great of player development and scouting and the ability to acquire talent like the Rams do, you might say to yourself, oh, it's time to move on, or we're just keeping Matthew Stafford because it's the most important position in football. He's a star and want to build around him. That's not the case for the Rams. If they didn't think he could win him a Super Bowl, this wouldn't be a conversation. If they didn't think that they had the roster in place to make a run at a Super Bowl with some other additions and things working out for him, this wouldn't be a conversation either. But there are reports out there that at the very least, NFL GMs are intrigued. They are intrigued. And this is from Daniel Jeremiah, who said, the Stafford stuff, I mean, I don't know if there's legs to it, but I know that it has a lot of people in personnel departments and general managers intrigued and seeing what's going to transpire there with him and the Rams. The fact that they just didn't come out and say he's not going anywhere has led people to believe that it's a possibility. So, sure, the Rams, if they wanted to, they could go out there and say that Matthew Stafford's not going anywhere. They're not going to do that. They're a very process-oriented organization. That's why they've had so much success. You can't make these emotional decisions with every single one of your players. You have to let the business side of this stuff play out. That's how you win on the margins, and that's how you're able to have sustained success. Just look at the 49ers last season. They were the media darling to win the NFC West. Everyone looked at the pieces, and they thought, okay, they're just going to run through the NFC and get back to the Super Bowl. Hasn't happened. Hasn't happened. The 49ers have done everything from a player acquisition standpoint to put themselves in a position to win a Super Bowl, and they've gotten very close, but they haven't done it. A lot of teams around the National Football League have tried to emulate what the Rams have done, but they skipped the part where they hoist the Lombardi Trophy. So the point is, the Rams strategy works in all of this, so I don't think there is a reason for them to go out there and do something that would lose them any leverage, right? They shouldn't do that. Matthew Stafford needs to realize that the Rams give him the best position to win a Super Bowl. He doesn't know what it's like in other organizations right now. They could sell him on, oh, you could be the missing piece here. You could be the savior. I mean, how did that work for Aaron Rodgers, right? How did that work for other quarterbacks we've seen thrusted into situations? I mean, for every Tom Brady to the Bucs, you got an Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, right? Does anyone really believe that Matthew Stafford in year 1 with the Giants or year 2 of the Giants is going to win a Super Bowl? Would his chances be better with the Giants or the Steelers or the Vikings? Teams like that than the Rams? No, they're not. So I think if you're the Rams, you have to realize, hey, we're better at this than most of these teams out there in the National Football League. So, hey, we're a prize too, right? We're a prize too, right? So I think that's very important for the Matthew Stafford camp to realize in all this. Because, look, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he's been everything that they had hoped for really as a quarterback. I mean, would they like to have a mobile quarterback at some point, as we talked about in the last episode with Les Snead's comments? I'm sure they would, but Matthew Stafford is one of those quarterbacks that is a little bit of a throwback. He's not old. He's classic. He's vintage Stafford, right? And I think that every now and then you're going to have quarterbacks that have arms that are so special that they transcend where the game is trending towards. And Matthew Stafford's arm is that special, if we're just being quite honest about it. You look at the numbers. I mean, he's thrown for 14,700 yards around that with the Rams, 95 touchdowns, 44 interceptions in 55 games. He's been awesome in those 7 postseason games. They've won 5 of them. If you look at the numbers last season, they won't blow your mind. 3,762 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. But we know that when it's time to perform at the highest level in the playoffs, that Stafford brings you the chance to compete and win those games. I think, too, you could surround him with better weapons, better talent. I mean, Cooper Kupp just wasn't that guy last season. Colby Parkinson was a bust for the kind of contract they gave him. Higbee was out for most of the year. You didn't really have a dynamic tight end that could do anything. Kyren Williams is really good. He's not an explosive running back. Demarcus Robinson, really a role player type receiver. So that's another thing I think I want to consider. That's a conversation I want to have on Matthew Stafford is, hey, yeah, I know that you guys know how to draft and develop, but if we're truly going to continue this relationship, if we're going to continue this run together, I want to know that we got all the chips and we're pushing him to the middle of the table, because that's what a move would indicate to me if you bring back Matthew Stafford on a new contract is, hey, we're going back to a little bit of an FM picks type of era where we're pushing those chips in, we're taking off the watch, throwing it in the middle of the table, we're taking off the wife's earrings, throwing it in the middle of the table, we're taking the lien of the mortgage, throwing it in the middle of the table, because that's what this organization does. And they're not about playoff appearances, division titles, NFC championship game appearances, Super Bowl losses. Those things show growth and development for a young team for sure. But a team like the Rams that has a Super Bowl winning quarterback in the twilight, I guess I should say the sunset of his career in Matthew Stafford, who I still think has 2 or 3 really, really good to great seasons left in him and some awesome playoff moments, and he has all the tools to accomplish those things. I think you got to be as all in as ever if you do bring him back. And I think that's what it's all about, because if you want to make inroads in Los Angeles and compete with the eyeballs here and continue to grow that prestige, and I mean, just look at the Eagles, right? The Eagles went from no Super Bowls to now you're like, damn, Eagles have 2 Super Bowls. Eagles have 2 Super Bowls. That is something that you can feel better about. You're part of that multiple Super Bowl club. And the Rams could go to that 3 Super Bowl club, 4 Super Bowl club, and then you just elevate, and you really plant your flag in Los Angeles saying, we are that team. We are that team in Los Angeles. The Chargers are here. They rent. But this is our home. And the foundation gets stronger, and that's why what I would see in Los Angeles. And I think it certainly starts with Matthew Stafford. But coming up next, we're going to start to look at the contract projections for the other Rams free agents. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so we're going to start a little series here on the Rams free agent contract projections and if we think that they should bring them back. So we're going to kind of do more about this player next week. But let's start with Jimmy Garoppolo. So Jimmy Garoppolo, he was really everything I think the Rams had hoped for, because we didn't see him that much. And we didn't see him that much because Matthew Stafford stayed healthy. But he was in there. They had a chance to win their season finale, the regular season finale against the Seahawks. He made some throws in that one, but he looked respectable. He looked like a professional. He knows the system. And if you look at his projected market value for Jimmy Garoppolo, it's at $3 million per season. And the deal he signed with the Rams, it gave an opportunity to earn up to $12 million. He ended up taking home a little over $3.1 million in 2024 because he played just one game. But he's looking at another contract in that same range. So you look at some of the other backups available. Jameis Winston's at $4 million per year. Mitch Trubisky's at $2.6 million per year. Garoppolo's a little bit on the older side, but I liked having Garoppolo on this team. I felt pretty comfortable about it. It did feel like the Rams kind of had the Apple Care. They had the insurance. They paid for that little insurance, and they felt good about, hey, if Matthew Stafford has to lose time, it's not Brett Rippon. Brett Rippon was not an NFL caliber quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo felt like an NFL caliber quarterback. And the beautiful thing is, if you bring him back and we don't see him, we know that everything went the Rams' way. So give me Jimmy Garoppolo back with the Los Angeles Rams. And if they don't, I think it's not going to be devastating or anything, but I liked having a veteran in that room. We've seen them with a lot of young guys, the Bryce Perkins, the Wolfords, names like that. I mean, Carson Wentz, I think, was a really nice reclamation project that played well in his opportunity against the 49ers in the regular season finale of 2023. Parlayed that into a nice deal as the Chiefs backup. But I think there's something to be said about a veteran that doesn't necessarily have that major itch to be a premier starting quarterback again, but also is very comfortable in his role, knowing that, hey, if it gets to me and I'm under center, I can at least give this team a chance to win, and it's not an automatic loss. Brett Rippon was an automatic loss. No more automatic L's for Rams backup quarterback. So that's why I think I'd be very happy if Jimmy Garoppolo was back with the Rams. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, drop some comments on podcasts as far as the reviews go. We'll read them on the show, and drop your comments down below. We're going to have a lot of mailbag episodes. I'm going to be featuring your takes this off season. So it's going to be a fun off season, guys. And we're going to, before we know it, it'll be football again. Let's be honest. Before we know it, it'll be football season again. We'll be talking about preseason and opening night, and it's going to be exciting stuff. But let's lock in so we can build this, we can follow this whole Super Bowl build together. But that's the deal, guys, and enjoy your weekend. I'll see you Monday. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.